Greetings everybody and welcome back to Daddy DeGrand, the Granddaddy. We'll actually not play Hades today. This time I will just do a bit of talking. A few of you guys were actually interested in having some kind of overall idea, some kind of guide to how I approach the Pact of Punishment, how I make the decisions that I make to make this work, especially for higher heated runs. So I'll try to explain some of the Pact options and give you an idea for how some of these options work with one another or what weapon combinations will work better for certain Pact options. So let me first of all explain them one after another. Hard labor, the first one, is pretty straightforward. You have up to 4 points you can spend. Each one increases the damage you take from enemies, only from enemies, by 25%, up to 100% extra damage. This is a lot, and this is very noticeable, but it is far less than what the previous pact used to do. It is still a very, very impactful choice to make, so you have to be fairly confident in your ability to not get hit to make this one work. Lasting Consequences goes in a similar direction, but instead of increasing the damage you take, it reduces the amount of healing you get. Now this is interesting because there are certain things that actually play around that. Most healing you get from, say, Charon's Wells or from your periodic regeneration you get from entering rooms, those will all be reduced. But increasing your max HP by picking up a Centaur Heart or an Ambrosia bottle after Dionysus have given you premium vintage, or even a Death of Fines, those are not affected by this. So this one thus becomes a bit more feasible to deal with than this one. And most of the time you're thinking about one of these, you will find yourself trying to find a good sweet spot between these two. Or you'll leave them all together to the side, that also works. Convenience fee, I think this one's also pretty straightforward. Just everything you can buy with money will cost either 50% or 100% more. This one is a very, very interesting thing because it doesn't actually make the game harder to play, but it does put a certain ceiling on the amount of healing you can get and the amount of damage you can buy out of your shops. And especially when we talk about healing, you can easily see how these two actually scale exponentially with one another, because not only will healing effects less potent, they will also become much harder to get. So this combination in particular is something to really look out for. Yuri summons, also straightforward. Most rooms spawn more enemies on you, up to 60%. Usually an option I don't really like to take because I don't like adding more enemies to my rooms. That means more things I have to kill, thus more time I spend fighting. And of course, more enemies means that there are more enemies that might deal more damage to me. So take this one with a lot of caution. Extreme measures, I think we have all seen it. Adding more sisters to the first boss fight. It can be disastrous. Especially Alecto, if you have her in the fight, can put a huge dent in your HP. But with a little bit of practice, you can get used to it. And after you're done with that first boss fight, these 2 heat points will never bother you for the rest of the game. So it is a very interesting choice, one that is very personal. Calisthenics program, all enemies, and this includes bosses, have 30% more HP. Especially if you combine this one with Yuri summons. It can exponentially increase the time you spend in fights quite a bit. If you're a confident fighter, that's not that much of a problem, but it does become a problem when you consider that tight deadline exists. And this one is actually very interesting, and that doesn't make the game all that much harder to play, it just forces you to play very fast. In later floors, you usually don't notice it that much, but the very first floor, that is usually the one where I personally always get a bit close to that first timer. So if you want to go fast, having enemies be more tanky or more numerous is usually not what you want. And in the same row is damage control. Damage control gives enemies up to 2 stacks of blue armor, which will just completely absorb one singular hit. This is much less of a concern for certain weapons, like the Chaos Shield for example, or Charon's Bow. Those can play around this very easily. The Spear for example has a very hard time to deal with that, for reasons that I will explain later on. Underworld Customs, I gotta say, I have never actually tried that out. So I don't know how impactful it actually is. I don't know if you can choose it. I have shied away from it because I am never, almost never, in a situation where I want to give away a boon I got. Snake oil, similar to the Fury fight, 1 point of heat that you will never have to worry about. The fight is hard, and especially if you have the heightened security up for more trap damage, it can end up putting quite a dent on you. But at least to me, that aside, the fight is actually a bit easier with snake oil on, because the snakeheads actually pile up together a bit more so that you can just finish them off a bit more efficiently. Speaking of efficiency, forced overtime. I think this one is probably the most infamous heat option we have in this game. Makes enemy move up to 50% faster, and this is where that huge exponency factor I was talking about earlier comes in. So you have the option to make enemies deal a lot more damage. That's okay, you just take a bit more care of you being able to dodge these enemies. But then there are also more enemies. Now you have 60% more enemies to deal with that will also deal 100% extra more damage. And suddenly dodging becomes much more hard. Now all of these enemies are also 50% faster. And this makes it incredibly easy to get hit and to get hit hard. So these are the choices. These are the things you have to keep in mind when you design your pact. Heightened security I already talked about. Budget cuts. This one is actually very interesting, and I will go into that one a bit more in depth. No choice, it's terrible. You never really want to put more than 1 point into this one. 1 point is okay because that still leaves you with 2 choices. And in most cases those 2 choices will still give you something good. But having all choices robbed of you, trust me guys, that will hurt you deeply and dearly. So, budget cuts. As you can see, you can put up to 5 points in that. Here's the thing. If we go with the full budget, I will be able to buy a lot of things, but I won't be able to buy everything I want. Let's say I want to have a certain amount of death defiances. I of course want my greater reflex, maybe some catonic vitality to the max. I still have some points open, so we can get that one. But we don't get anything else. We don't get more cast stones, for example. We can't get the shadow presence for extra damage. No extra damage from our cast stones. We can't even get a little bit of extra damage from privileged status or thick skin. This hurts. So what I advise when it comes to budget cuts is to not go all the way with that. Go with just 4 heat points in that. That will actually leave you at 1,000 darkness, and this 1,000 darkness will actually allow you to buy everything you want and really need to make a run work. This way I can get the privileged status. I think I can also get the infernal soul for all the cast stones. I can even buy some extra HP. And look at that, I'm exactly at 1,000 HP. 75 HP. 3 death defiances, extra damage from privileged status. That is basically all you really need. And of course the extra dodges. And look at that, you're already at 4 heat. If you are pretty new to the game, if you don't have the mirror maxed out, this is basically a given choice, because this just will make your gameplay that much easier, giving you the rewards, which will have long-term benefits, while also just not impacting your gameplay all that much. If you have the mirror fully maxed out like I do, you lose out on some rarities and on some rerolls, but at least in my personal experience, you don't really need to reroll all that often in this update, so it is fair game, really. So, what would I suggest newcomers to the game that just have to start the game playing 1 heat or 2 heat? What would I suggest these guys doing? It depends. It also depends on the weapon you pick. If you've watched my video for a while, you know that I think the Chaos Shield is the strongest weapon in the game. I of course have it fully maxed out, it's very strong. But even without it being fully maxed out, it's a generally strong weapon. The shield is amazing because it gives you the ability to block, adding an extra level of defense to your run. So if you feel comfortable with that weapon, you can easily get away with increasing the damage the enemies deal to you. On my 30 heat victory I actually had this cranked up to the maximum. And because I was feeling so safe, because I had that defensive factor, I was actually fine for the most part. So that worked out for me, but it doesn't have to work out for you. So this is something where you have to be very mindful about where you personally stand in the game. or about the run you want to engineer as you go. Another thing to really watch out for is to never, ever mix middle management for the extra middle bosses with forced overtime. If you have watched my videos, trust me, this combination in Asphodel has a 50% chance to completely ruin your run. If you find the Mega Gorgon and Head Crusher right, this combination will end your run. It will immediately take 1 to 3 of your Death Defiances, because that fight is borderline impossible to get through without taking a huge amount of big hits. Trust me on that front, guys. So, for newcomers, you just start out with 1 heat, and in my opinion it would be good to get you used to 3 things as early as possible. Snake Oil. This is just a pretty free point in my opinion. The sooner you get used to this fight, the better. After that, or parallel to that, get used to extreme measures. Get used to how chaotic that first boss fight can be with the 2 Fury Sisters. If you can get past that, it's good, it's great, and aside from these 2 fights, these 3 heat points will never cause you any trouble on that run ever again. And look at that, with that 3 heat points, you can basically clear out the entire game with 5 weapons, giving you a lot of diamonds and keys, which you can then use to make your ongoing runs a bit easy on yourself. After that, and this one might be a bit controversial, I highly suggest getting used to forced overtime as soon as possible. It will suck. It will suck big time. But trust me guys, if you get used to it, you will get used to it, and it will feel like second nature, and will make all your ongoing endeavors much simpler. I've been basically playing with forced overtime active for the entirety of the current update, and it has helped me so much to improve as a player. Parallel to that, the tight deadline. It is a very, very strong option because it immediately offers you 5 heat points, and it does not make the game actually any harder. It just forces you to make decisions quick, to fight efficiently, deal lots of damage very quickly. But if you can do that, if you can get that habit in, this is another freebie basically. Like, there was a time when I just went in and had this forced overtime together with tight deadline as my baseline. The game actually did not feel all that much harder overall, but I had the 10 heat baseline for all the weapons set and was just able to farm all the keys, all the diamonds. So this is basically what I would suggest. Finding a mix, a balance between the harder boss fights, forced overtime and tight deadline. If you have gotten to a point, you will have a better feeling for how to approach the game, for how to leverage your own strengths, your own weaknesses, how to leverage the weapons, what they can, what they have as a potential, and can make some educated guesses on how you would personally pursue a run. Let's take the bow for example. I personally, and I know most of you do, love the Chiron aspect. This is a very, very strong boon. It's very, very high damage. It's especially very high single target damage. Basically, no matter what you do, your single target damage with that weapon will be amazing. So when I approached that run, I was looking at calisthenics program when I was going for 24 heat attempts, because I felt like this extra HP won't hurt me as much because of how strong my single target damage will be. On the other hand, I really did not want Yuri summons on top of this, because the Chiron aspect is actually pretty weak when it comes to changing targets on the fly. You always have to do a basic attack, then some specials, and when the target is dead or you want to attack another target, you have to do the very same thing. And that takes time. That is time that will, first of all, tick off your clock, but also give enemies time to attack you, and that's not what you want. So that's something that I would make myself thoughts about. On the other hand, the Chaos aspect, incredibly easy to get huge area damage with it. So I actually felt comfortable playing this one with Yuri summons, and it actually worked out just nicely. It's not going to happen on every run, but on most runs, at least for me, it ended up working out that way, and I was very happy about that. So yeah, that's basically a general idea on the kind of thoughts you have to make for yourself when it comes to approaching the Pact of Punishment. There's a lot of context and a lot of personal decisions you have to get in. But most of all, it's just about practice and self-reflection. You have to know what you can do, what you want to do, and in what manner you have to do it. I hope I was able to give you guys a general idea, and if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, have the greatest of days, and stay as awesome as you are.